It's news time. Information is power. Be current. The news headline: U.S. ignores small African terrorist group Ipob militants at its peril. Washington Times. The State Department needs to designate indigenous people of Biafra as a foreign terrorist organization. Analysis and opinion. An African terrorist organization is suing the U.S. Secretary of the State, Anthony Blinken, and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin in U.S. federal courts. So, this is how it happens. The violent secessionist group in question, that is the indigenous people of Biafra, Ipob, is yet to be designated a foreign terrorist organization, FTO, by the U.S. Department of the State. This is despite repeated pleas to do so by long-standing U.S. ally Nigeria, where Ipob is based and carries out its murderous activities. It is difficult to explain how U.S. interests are served by inaction and complacency on the indigenous people of Ipob. The listing costs nothing, but the designation would have significant implications for the group's continuance, and this is where we start from. Tagging the group with a terror label would eat indigenous people of Biafra wallets hard. As soon as the designation is applied, no organization that utilizes U.S. currency would be able to legally conduct transactions with the organization by cutting off Ipob's funding. The United States would weaken the 50,000-strong paramilitary outfit and provide Nigeria security forces room to train their sights squarely on ISIS-affiliated Boko Haram in the northeast of the country. Counter-terrorism operations against Boko Haram have been long assisted by the United States agencies, working in close coordination with the West African government. And though the indigenous people of Biafra may appear to be Abuja's problem alone, the militants have served as a distraction and bled precious resources. Over the past 18 months, Boko Haram has regrettably been able to regroup and rejuvenate. The same is true of Al-Qaeda-affiliated groups across the volatile Sahel region. That the African continent is rapidly becoming a staging group for global terror operations should actually concern the U.S. officials. But Nnamdi Kanu, the Ipob leader, is clearly unconcerned. That he feels no need to even disguise his support of terrorism is to restore a breakaway state of Biafra in the southeastern part of Nigeria, and Mr. Kanu's rhetoric has become increasingly strident. I don't want peaceful actualization of Biafra. Mr. Kanu has said through his Radio Biafra channel and used to project threat instructions and propaganda into Nigeria from the safety of London, saying that if they don't give us Biafra, they will die. Neither does Mr. Kanu idle threats. The December revelation of Ipob's 50,000-strong armed paramilitary wing, the Eastern Security Network (ESN), complete with a swastika-style flag, marked the end to all pretenses of being a peaceful movement. What had been largely unspoken was publicly declared, and since then, violent indigenous people of Biafra attacks on both security personnel and civilians are surged by a terrifying 59%, deaths by 344%. More than 20 attacks were carried out in the first 3 months of this year alone, including the retribution-style bombing of a local state governor's home where 4 were killed, and an attack on a prison that freed some 2,000 dangerous criminals. Even neighboring states were forced to impose curfews to protect their citizens from marauders. There is also a nasty racial element to the Ipob attack, and in addition to attacks on the state, much of this violence is directed towards the Fulani people, a nomadic tribe of elders that roam across West Africa. Through the Biafra radio, indigenous people of Biafra regularly calls on its supporters to not only kill the Fulani, but to kill any landlord that gives accommodation or rents his house or a house to a Fulani person. And in one recent attack on the Fulani community, 6 young children were butchered with machetes. One, a baby, was burned alive. Their bodies were discarded in mass graves, and whether with threats made on Biafra radio or repeated acts of violence, Ipob coerces politicians and civilians to acquiesce to its radical political demands. An example saw all the governors of Southeast Nigeria bow to a 14-day ultimatum to ban open grazing in their region, a move targeting the livelihoods of the Fulani rather than face the wrath of the ESN. Similarly, the indigenous people of Biafra enforced a sit-at-home order every Monday and intended to economically cripple the region through acts like the torching of passenger buses. The United States has correctly prescribed terror label to other secessionist groups that employ these tactics: the ETA in Spain, the Tamil Tigers in Sri Lanka, and the PKK in Turkey. Now, the people Ipob claims to represent, the Igbo, are even seeking to distance themselves from the group. Therefore, one reason why the US has not gone ahead with this may be the group's $1 million contract with prominent American lobbying firms paid to whitewash the group's reputation and lobby on Capitol Hill. It is impossible to believe that the indigenous people of Biafra and Kanu's deep pockets are being lined by external organizations. A terror designation will put a stop to this influence speedily. It would also mean that the group could not use the US or its Western allies like London-based Radio Biafra to further their cause. The group outsized influence in function of its radio station, paid hands, and United States lawyers would be severely curtailed. Law enforcement in the US, the UK, and elsewhere will be obligated to act by shutting down their activities. That a small terrorist organization can bully US officials in American courts and leverage the influence of foreign agents to challenge an ally's security would be laughable, where it is not so alarming. And this is the news asking the United States to actually designate the indigenous people of Biafra as a terrorist group. And this was said that an African terrorist organization, that is the Ipob, are actually suing the United States Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin in U.S. federal courts, saying that the indigenous people of Biafra was actually not being designated as a foreign terrorist organization. This is because of the repeated pleas to do so by the U.S. ally Nigeria. And why it is not like that for now is because they are still trying to work things around the terrorism